Hello, happy Tuesday. My name is Matt Mulcahy. I am the Director of Business Development at ProSource, and thank you for joining our second webinar of the Ask a Pro series, covering the current state of radiology. Today we're going to be speaking with three experts in the industry to cover emerging trends and topics and see from their perspective how they are addressing the current trends in the radiology space. Joining us today is Dr. Eric Schulze, and I'll give everyone a couple seconds to introduce him. Go ahead, Dr. Eric.
Yeah, hi, I'm a radiologist, practicing radiologist, but before I started Lifetrack Medical Systems, of which I'm CEO, I was a hospital radiologist and worked at a 400-bed tertiary care hospital in Texas. And that was when I started a teleradiology company. That actually is what brought me to build a software company, which was because I had done teleradiology using the tools of the day, which are still out there, and realized it was inefficient and wasn't going to work for real distributed enterprise teleradiology and just distributed radiology in total. So that's what I did. So Lifetrack CEO and radiologist. So there.
Thanks, Eric. Next up, we've got Michael Durrant.
Good morning. I'm Michael Durrant, the Director of Global Growth for Lifetrack Medical Systems. I've been in radiology and software for about 20 years now. I've had the pleasure of working for several different PACS companies and working with many more. So industry veteran, and I've seen quite a bit in the industry.
Thanks, Michael. And the last panelist is Leon Hart.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Leon Hart. I am President and CEO of ProSource. We are a managed IT and security provider for small to mid-sized businesses. I have approximately 3 decades of experience in IT, several stops along the way, but namely for the last 15 years or so with ProSource. Get the pleasure of working with a lot of different vendors in a lot of different areas, but our focus right now is really on compliance-based industries, and healthcare being one of our largest. So it's a pleasure to be here today, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Lee. So today we're going to give each panelist about 5 minutes to cover their unique perspective in the industry and what they're seeing and hearing from customers, vendors, and partners. First up, we'll have Dr. Schulze, and he's going to talk for about 5 minutes here to cover his unique perspective in the space. Floor is yours, Eric.
Yeah, hey, so yeah, great to be here. Thanks to ProSource for sponsoring this. Yeah, no, as I said earlier, I'm a radiologist. I did about 12 years of teleradiology in my last company, sold that company, and then kind of looked at all the stuff that needed fixing. And I would have thought someone would have fixed it. And so, but since the toolkits of those days, are still the ones in use today, it hadn't been done. So that's why I started Lifetrack. But the key thing for a radiologist in my experience and working with all the people, all the radiologists that I've worked in teleradiology companies, including my own, is just speed is of the essence. The key thing for a radiologist is to be able to log on, no hassle, get a case done, get to the next case, dictate the report, review the images, dictate the report, and move on. And the faster you can do that, the more efficiently you can do that. And if possible, add help along the way in terms of actually even the diagnoses and keeping everything as integrated as possible. That's where you get super high efficiency, high quality workflows. And so that's where I focused my efforts, is to try and make it so that functionally, so that the software disappears and, radiologist gets to do our job, right? Look at pictures and talk about them. One of the other big, issues that we face as radiologists is, we're at the hospital, it's one software. We get out from the hospital, even though it's the same software, it may not have the same full workflow because it's sort of a, PACS Lite of some sort, or you have to hit it over a VPN or something like that. And, that's too painful for most of us. And it's challenging for our IT folks trying to support us. And so if we can make it as much as possible, your workflow, your way, and have it so that it's your enterprise workflow that fits your practice, then, that's what you want to be able to do. The other thing, nowadays with the huge shortage of radiologists, right? We have to use all our resources the most efficiently as we can, right? And I think one of the biggest lack of or losses of efficiency in a radiology practice is when you have, 5 hospitals and a 20-person group. You only have 4 radiologists per hospital, and that means that every hospital doesn't have every subspecialist. And I know, as I do mostly emergency room radiology. If someone throws in an MSK small parts, ankle or wrist MRI in the middle of a busy, ER shift, they might as well throw in a hand grenade into my reading room, because it's just going to, lose me just ungodly amounts of time while I remember all of the anatomy and, all the tendons and whatnot. Whereas if that same, MSK small parts, wrist went to the wrist, the MSK fellowship trained radiologist, they knock it out in the same speed at which I knock out a gunshot wound, no problem, right? So if your PACS can get the right case to the right radiologist, well, then you've totally won the game, right? But what that requires is to have an enterprise workflow that doesn't care about where you are at those 5 hospitals. It just cares about what are your specialties and how do you get those cases, and only the cases that you're the one to read, right? And so I think the biggest loss of the efficiency is not being able to do distributed enterprise workflow, which is that doesn't matter which hospital you're in, you can get the case that the cases that you want, and your other colleagues get the cases they want. So it's a triple win. Everybody wins. So if you get the right case to the right rad, you gain more efficiency than just about anything else. And if the technology kind of disappears because all you're really doing is one button, get to the next case, and off you go, then now you're really talking serious efficiency. So, I think that's, the one of our biggest focus is to make it so that the technology disappears both on the IT side and on the software side, and we achieve the highest efficiency possible by getting the cases that we're the best at, right? And then, obviously times are changing pretty quickly, right? Who would have thought before COVID that all of us would be working from home, right? Well, if you have the right software, it really doesn't matter if you're down the hall from the patient or on the other side of the world. It really doesn't matter, right? And so as much as possible, that's where we try and get things going. And, if your software can change with the times and is, can fit just about any workflow, well, then you've really, made it future-proof as well. So I think that's where I'm coming from. And obviously, working with the right IT people makes it 1,000 times easier. I don't really want to have to know what's going on behind the scenes. I shouldn't have to be troubleshooting, the IT side and a router here and, internet there and all that kind of stuff. So that's why we think it's really helpful to be working with groups like ProSource, because then that stuff fades into the background too. So I think that's pretty much most of what I had to say.
Great.
Certainly helping people start their own teleradiology practices, but also, improve their efficiencies across, the clinic chains, imaging center chains, and hospital chains. They all suffer from the same issues of, the right radiologist getting the right case as fast as possible. So
definitely. All right, great. Thank you, Eric. We're going to move on to Michael next. He's going to cover his perspective in this space. Go ahead, Michael.
Sure. So when it comes to the operational side of this and the implementation side, it really is about balancing speed and security of any system. We could have a system that's wide open, Eric could read as fast as possible, but then we're going to be compromising PHI at some point. So we need to shut that down. So that's really why, for me, it's important to be working with a strong IT team as well, who has that knowledge that, okay, this is what we can do, and this is how fast we can get you to read. We've been seeing a lot more elimination of virtual desktops over the years. That was huge about 5 years ago, but, well, that compromises speed. So those are starting to go out the window, and we're starting to look more at VPNs and software that can inherently handle reading over TLS or sending images to Eric seamlessly to him. With that, if system's not available, he can't work. So we need to make sure that everything we're doing for him, it's ready to go. He starts logging in the morning, he has to run updates, he has to check his speech mic, he has to check, 50,000 other things. That compromises his speed and what he can do. So it's really on the IT side and operation side, making sure that he can get to what he needs to do as fast as possible and stay as fast as possible. We have put a lot of things in the system to start helping that, such as, hey, when one case closes, another case opens right up. Sounds pretty simple, but that saves him quite a few clicks, which makes him very happy. Also, when he's reading one study, another's already downloading. So when he goes to open it, he's not sitting there waiting. There were times, maybe a year or two ago, a radiologist saw the anatomal coming, they'd go get a cup of coffee. They're not working for the next 5-10 minutes. That's, hey, let's go have a smoke. Not now. He sits down, he's reading, and that's all we want him to focus on. So with that, it's also focusing on making sure that you have a solid platform. And when you're updating your platform, it's ready to go the next morning. And he's not sitting downloading something, waiting for an MSI to be pushed out. It's instantaneous. He doesn't even realize the change in most cases. I've seen some upgrades that are 18 plus hours of downtime, and then we're spending weeks troubleshooting because, there's issues. Something wasn't tested. One radiologist wasn't told about it. He was out for 24 hours. These are all things that are pretty simple to avoid. And one of the things I was most impressed about Lifetrack when I started, it's that eat your own dog food mentality. Before anything goes out to an end user, guess who's been reading on it for 3 weeks? And he's a radiologist, not a QA guy saying, this is going to work. This is going to work. We think this passed a smoke test. Nope. We know it works. We get 0 complaints. I was reading I want to say it was an update last week. 7 sites were updated, 0 downtime, 0 complaints the next day. That's revolutionary for the industry. Sorry. And the last part, so I wanted to talk about was the protected health information, making sure that we're never losing any PHI. This is a 24/7 job. Just because the site closed for the day does not mean we have to stop protecting it. That's when we're running updates, making sure we have security patches coming out. Facilities have closed over this. People have lost their jobs. It's a major issue. I'm not going to mention names, but I have received migration drives that were unencrypted, no passwords, just sent through the mail with thousands of patient records on it. Big no-nos, which is one of the reasons I really like working with IT facilities who know what they're doing. Makes us all safe, makes us sleep as best we can at night. And one of the other features that I do want to, tout this one a little bit. There are outside reading groups. We all know it. Hospitals have to send images either to another reading group across state lines, across country lines, depending on what's going on. Lifetrack built in a whitelist anonymized way to send data, which means no PHI actually leaves the country. I could send Eric a study right now. I'm in Bethlehem, PA. He's in Manila. All he's going to see, age, sex, and the images. Report comes back to me. I've got everything I need, and nothing ever left the country.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Unique perspective for sure. A lot of time in the space and some exciting things coming up. Our last speaker today is Lee. He's going to touch on the technology side and what he experiences in the radiology space over the last couple of years.
Thanks, Matt. I love being on this panel because it's great to see experts in this field that kind of help us really focus what we do better. And one of the big things that we get back, and especially in the radiology space, is we 70% of our business is in healthcare, and we have a lot of unique experience in the teleradiology workspace in particular. But one of the biggest complaints that we see and we get out there is just that consistency of user experience. We've worked with a lot of different healthcare systems. We've worked with a lot of different PACS vendors. We've worked with some that have neat technology, some that have technology that just doesn't work very well. And we have struggled with a lot of facilities that have tried to make something work that is just known to not work very well. So one of the big things that we pride ourselves on is being able to take all of that experience that we have and kind of create a really good, consistent support model and something that lends itself to a great user experience for our customers. And we support a lot of different, we support large healthcare systems. We support, individual radiology practices and even imaging facilities for that matter. So we have a lot of experience across this space, but that's one of the #1 complaints is just how can I read consistently across all of these different systems that we read for. So we've been able to kind of turn that into a playbook, so to speak, and craft unique solutions for all of these different entities, which has been exciting and transformative for them in the same vein. And that kind of leads into flexible reading options. Not everybody has to have a $30,000 worth of reading hardware to be able to read remotely. There's a lot of other ways to do that. And one of the recipes that we've developed over the years is a way to have, a way to read mammography and non-mammography images remotely without having to have, really, really high-end hardware. So there's some unique capabilities there that we offer in the space that will be helpful. But that's, the flexibility of reading options is one of the big things, and Dr. Eric said it early on, in the time of COVID and the proliferation of everybody working from home, it's really created a unique need and a unique situation. Radiologies are in high demand and short supply. And it's interesting. My some of my daughter's friends in high school are actually wanting to go into college to learn how to be radiologists. I mean, it's exciting to see the trend there because there's such a huge need for it. But being able to read from anywhere is the trend, and we see that a lot. And that's caused a need to have more flexible reading options. So being able to read in non-clinical settings is actually really, really important. And those are some of the big trends that we see in the industry is having the flexibility to do that and having a good PACS system that can actually allow that to happen well. And that's why I like working with partners like Lifetrack for things like that. Reliable technology kind of goes without saying. Dr. Eric mentioned it. I think Michael mentioned it as well. It's you got to have things that just work. And I equate this to an old phrase from an old customer of mine from many, many years ago, that his expectation of technology is it needs to work like a light switch. I walk in a room, I turn on the lights, and it just works. And that's, it's cliche, but it's so true. It's, with the day and age of security and all the bad things that are out there and the need to protect this sensitive information and to do a really good job well, is you have to have things that just work. And reliable technology is the key to that, not necessarily cutting edge technology, just reliable technology. And that's where, our decades of experience and specifically working in the healthcare space and knowing what works and what doesn't work really plays a big part in a lot of the solutions we craft for our customers. So we're able to help a lot of customers upgrade into a modern age, work with newer technologies than they're used to. Gone are the days where radiologists have to get up at 2 a.m. and drive to the hospital. You need to have reliable, flexible reading options, consistent experiences, and happier work environment reads more productivity. So you can get those stat cases handled much faster than having to drive across town. So having good, reliable technology is really key. And the last thing I'll touch on is kind of layered security. Can't say it enough. Michael did a great job with it in his presentation about protecting things, data in transit, data at rest. There's this concept called defense in depth, and that's really protecting all the touch points that data transitions. And there's a lot of technical jargon in there, but really suffice to say is just making sure that information that's sensitive is anonymized in any way possible, which Lifetrack does a fantastic job of being able to do that. Not all PACS systems do that, by the way. And we struggle to see this with a lot of practices that use PACS systems that often refer images out. And that's not to say there's not a safe way to do that. Images can certainly transit from one system to another in a safe way. But as soon as PHI leaves your environment, it's really hard to get that back. So protecting it as much as you can is kind of the key. And there's a lot of different ways to be able to do that in any type of an environment, whether it's a healthcare environment, it's a remote reading environment, where you have less control over some of the aspects of how you read. But it's really, really critically important that you protect all of that information as much as possible. Think of it this way, is the information about your family and your parents on someone else's system a concern to you? And if the answer is yes, then that's why it's important to us. So being able to protect that in any way possible is one of the biggest things we see in this time of cybersecurity, cybercrime, ransomware, all of these things, these buzzwords you hear in healthcare. Healthcare systems are the biggest targets, and you don't have to be big to be affected by it. closing up those holes, like Michael said, making sure that we anonymize data where we can. We encrypt the data that's sitting on systems. If we're doing downloads and caching data, make sure that information is encrypted. If something happens when a radiologist isn't home and someone breaks in and steals that equipment, you need to make sure that information stays safe. So being able to do that in a systematic way, protect all that patient information as much as possible, is really a core tenet of why we are in the compliance healthcare space. So those are the big trends that we see right now in healthcare. And as I mentioned, I love being on this panel. I love working with providers like this that actually understand that experience and want to work together to improve that for all of the users out there.
Great. Thanks, Lee. Great little synopsis there. So we're going to move on. There's a couple of people that have posed questions in the chat. I'm going to consolidate these real quick and farm them out here. So I've got one. How are you helping practices speed up read turnaround times? Eric, do you want to speak on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on it a little bit before. Making sure that the right case gets to the right radiologist. So workflow efficiency and routing of cases is a key component to any really efficient workflow. Cases come, and we all know how it is, right? When it rains, it pours, and when that happens, you have to be able to be nimble and set up, either workflow rules or be able to grab cases and make sure that, one thing you got to make absolutely certain of is that no two radiologists read the same case at the same time. So there's got to be the capability of having it locked and people, see even across distributed enterprises. So we can do these with Lifetrack. You can move things from one server to another server, but they're synchronized at the same time, even as being anonymized, which is an insane thing to be able to do. But so you can have one case being read as an anonymous case on a distal server, but at the same time everybody knows that it's being read because it's in a status and the lock is held. So yeah, being able to get the right case to the right radiologist, no two cases being done at the same time by two different radiologists, total waste of time that would be, and making it fast. So like Michael pointed out, it's like while you're reading a case, the system should be downloading, the next cases on your work list, right? As a new case shows up on the work list, it prefetches it to your workstation and, off you go. So I think those are all key things that I struggled with in my first teleradiology company, years back in 2007. We're reading 1,000 cases a day, but it was like using stone knives and bear skins with the current the technology of the day, which actually hasn't changed in 15 years. I mean, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to build a new PACS system, except for well, if nothing else actually does what you need it to do to be able to do fast, efficient radiology in a distributed network, guess what? You do it. So
yeah. Well, thanks for taking the mantle on that. That's a simple task, right? Okay, I've got another questions here. A couple more. What types of facilities do you work with? Let's split this one up. Michael, do you want to go first on this one, and then we'll hand it to Lee?
Sure. All right. I've worked with government facilities across the world. Mostly Asia, South America, and North America. I've worked with startup imaging facilities that didn't know if they were going to survive the month. I've worked with telerad practices who just got started and then one's reading, hundreds of thousands of cases a month. And I've even tackled a few professional organizations and individual teams on that side. So I've covered pretty much just about anything that you could think of imaging-wise.
Great. Lee, you want to give them some background in terms of who you work with?
Yeah. I think I touched on it a little bit with the types of clients that we most encounter, but we work with large healthcare systems. It could be hospital groups. What we've also often found is that a lot of the teleradiology services or outside reading services that hospitals will often hire don't want to have anything to do with the outside readers. They love their own solution. They love their four-wall hospital solution internally, but they don't have anybody to support that stuff outside the office. And that's a unique thing that we can certainly offer those systems. But we also work with teleradiology groups, imaging centers are some of our clients, but don't quite have the breadth of experience Michael does in that space with international reading. But it's great. It's great to know the technology is there and that we can certainly be a part of that. But yeah, a lot of small, mid-sized groups, 60, 70 radiology practices and up are really kind of what we focus on.
Perfect. Thank you. So the next question I've got here is, what is the number one challenge you hear from customers? Let's give this to both sides. So Eric, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge for most customers is, as a radiologist, we've all worked in, different practice settings, different hospitals. And I can't remember any two hospitals or imaging centers or anything that I've ever worked at that had the same workflow. So I think the biggest challenge, for IT groups, radiology software, anything, is that every single place that you work has a different workflow, and so guess what? Software doesn't fit any workflow in general, right? But actually, we have Lifetrack. We have 8 U.S. patents on what kind of can be distilled down to 4 words: your PACS, your way. Meaning that those 8 patents allow us to fit your workflow, so you don't have to fit our PACS, right? Our software fits your workflow. Your software doesn't have to fit our workflow. And what that allows us to do is take a 3-month deployment and turn it into a week. We just recently did a 150-bed hospital and had it deployed and trained in a week, and got to the point where we got no support questions and started wondering, were they using the PACS? So we checked the numbers, like, yeah, they're using it, just no questions, right? And the reason why was because there was there's a whole industry called change management. Well, what is that? It's basically saying, well, you can't really do the workflow you want to do or that you're used to doing, so we're going to help you understand how the workarounds work in our system. Well, in our system was literally architected, there's no permissions matrix. We can fit your workflow so you don't have to fit ours. It's your PACS, your way. And I think that makes life so much easier for radiologists and the admins and the techs. People forget about, the entire imaging chain, right? It starts with the front desk clerk, the technologist, the radiologist is one piece in that, it's a key piece, but like, everything there has to work, and that includes the whole IT side too. So if you decrease the friction because you can actually fit the workflow, well, you just won the game and made everybody happier. Honestly, it's like, yep. Look, I know how to do this. So.
Okay, great. Lee, what's the number one challenge you hear from customers?
Simplicity. I go back to that light switch that I spoke about briefly. It's making sure the technology works when you need it to work. We get countless frustrating calls from practices or places that we end up working with long term that are just struggling with having a good, consistent way to read. It's the solution that was implemented is not the solution that works best for them. They may try a VDI type solution versus a VPN type solution. They don't have any standards really around reading, and certainly don't have the technology structure in place to really be able to support that. So consistency with the experience, which is conspicuously why it was number one on my list, is one of the number one challenges that we hear from customers.
Great. Someone threw us a softball here. I really like this one. So how can I protect my practice from being hacked? That's the question of the decade, it seems like. So we'll give a couple of perspectives on this one. Lee, why don't you pick this one up and then we'll hand it off to Michael.
Sure. The number one way to protect your business, honestly, and it's often overlooked, is education. It really starts with security awareness And, practices will talk about making sure that they train their staff on HIPAA and the privacy and security rules and all those sorts of things. But I don't know if they really understand what all of that means and what it means to actually protect that information. But being aware of how people infiltrate that or exfiltrate in a lot of cases is the social engineering aspects of it. How can people get this information? How do you make sure that you obfuscate data when patients are standing next to you on a screen? There's simple techniques, and just being aware of honestly what you need to protect is the first thing. And then, of course, all the defense in depth stuff that I talk about. There's a lot of technology there to make sure that we close holes, that we don't expose PHI through technical methods and data transfers and things of that nature. And Michael can certainly speak to more of that. But there's a lot of encryption and other smoke and mirrors. As Dr. Eric pointed out, it just needs to work. You don't need to know how. And that's where we bring the expertise to be able to do all of that on the back end. But it really starts with education.
Michael, what's your perspective on that one? How can I protect my practice from being hacked is the question.
I'd say get a good IT company that you can trust. That's the number one right there. I mean, I've worked with a lot of different facilities over the years, some where they have, 50, 60 IT guys, dedicated security teams. I mean, they make it very hard to do business there, but, they're probably the best protected. Then again, I've been on the flip side of that where, we had a site get hacked, nothing to do with the PACS I was working with at the time, but we found out their chief of security couldn't come help us at the moment because he was in class and not college. He was in middle school, but still checking all the boxes. So for us, it's really about, you're going to make an investment in security. You're going to do the best you can. And that's really where you have to be, get people you can trust.
Great. Yeah, so that rounds out the questions. I'm going to bring us to the next slide here. If anyone's wondering how to get in contact with any of the panelists today, we've got some basic information here. I've also got, everyone should have my email address based on the invite as well. Feel free to reach out to me, but we're all available to speak about any of the subjects we've spoken on here today. And we look forward to our third episode of Ask a Pro, which will be coming up in the coming weeks. But really appreciate all the attendees today, taking a couple minutes here just to give their unique perspective, decades of experience in radiology, IT, and I think very unique perspectives on, what we're seeing, because we all talk to the same people, but the subject matter changes tremendously between the three of us. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to drive an exceptional customer experience, and especially radiology experience. So. Thanks so much, everyone. I really appreciate the time, and reach out if you got any questions, and I'm going to wrap this up.